Okay, I won't. Welcome, bienvenue. I'm Josephine Nalbantoglou. I'm the Dean of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies at McGill, and I'm very pleased to be hosting this event. This is this year's 3MT, 3-minute thesis, and my thèse en 180 secondes competition. I'm so glad that you could come and listen to all our presenters dans le volet francophone et anglophone de la compétition. Nous avons aussi des gens qui nous écoutent et nous regardent en ligne, beaucoup. Une audience qui est vraiment assez large, on le sait, de ce qui s'est passé dans les années auparavant. L'année dernière, quand on l'a fait, on avait une très grosse tempête. On avait quand même 200 personnes qui nous écoutaient. Alors, merci de participer. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that McGill University is located on land which has been a site of meeting and exchange amongst indigenous people. And this includes the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations. McGill honors, recognizes, and respects these nations as the traditional stewards of the lands and waters on which we meet today. As we begin, we're going to do some housekeeping notes for the audience as you're our privileged participants. So I'd like you to be able to turn off your phones, put them on silence. Aucun cellulaire, s'il vous plaît, parce que ça va déranger les présentateurs. You may take photos as you wish, but make sure that your flash is off so it doesn't distract presenters. We are happy to be in this beautiful historic museum, and there are certain conditions for us being here, and that's no food. So as you can see, we have enough bottles of water, but that's all you're allowed. Keep all the food outside. We're going to have a reception at the end, so you'll be able to participate in the festivities, but for now, just water. You should also all have a ballot in hand, because you're going to be participating in the voting for the People's Choice. Alors, vous pouvez voter pour le présentateur préféré après les présentations. Vous avez tous un bout de papier pour ça. So the 3MT is really a research communication competition that was developed in Australia at the University of Queensland. It's now an international competition that's carried out across the world. And Quebec was really the leader. Au Québec, l'ACFAS, l'Association francophone pour le savoir, a été le premier à participer, à lancer un concours qui était comme le 3MT. Alors, c'était ma thèse en 180 secondes. L'ACFAS a souhaité d'étendre le projet à l'ensemble de la francophonie. Alors, il y a des compétitions un peu partout à travers le monde. La personne qui va gagner ici, et notre candidat de McGill, va participer à la compétition provinciale à Chicoutimi. So graduate students have 3 minutes to present. Compelling, I think that's the key word. It's a compelling oral presentation of their thesis, the significance, why they're passionate about the work they're doing. And this is to everybody. Right? We're all non-specialists because we're not really working deeply in these topics, but it's up to the student to present it. And they only have one slide, so these are really very difficult conditions. On ne s'y attend pas d'habitude. On a plein de diapos, plein d'écritures dans les diapos. Alors, c'est un peu différent de ce qu'on fait comme chercheur académique. Alors, ce qu'on a fait cette année, ça fait à peu près 2 ans qu'on a lancé le concours et qu'on prépare les étudiants d'une façon assez particulière. So all the students who submitted proposals this year were offered skills training sessions. So we don't just want people to submit an abstract and then say, you're through, you're not through. Everybody gets development, professional development out of this in communications. Alors, les séances d'entraînement avaient pour but vraiment de permettre aux étudiants de s'améliorer. Et c'était des séances faites en groupe. Et après les éliminatoires, ça a été des séances individuelles. So after the heats, the 14 finalists who were chosen also got one-on-one training. And this included oral presentations, videotaping, and so on. So you're going to have superb presenters. The judges are going to have a very hard time. So we're all looking forward to this. So I'd like to introduce a panel of judges. Because the students are from all kinds of different groups, it's a panel that's vraiment un jury multidisciplinaire. Une personne nous manque, malheureusement, quelqu'un qui est malade, Cathy Wong, qui est... Elle est arrivée? Oh, elle arrive. D'accord, elle va arriver. So this is a stalwart presenter who was sick but who's still showing up. So I'll go through the background of our judges. Dr. Laura Weiner is in the middle here. Laura is the Director of Teaching and Learning Services at McGill. So she's been a special advisor to the provost. She was also in the office of the CIO. So she's the senior educational technologist. She's taught at many different faculties at McGill, Université de Montréal, and Concordia. She's conducted research on educational training applications. She's the one who's been really spearheading all teaching and learning services programs at McGill, and we graduate program, postdoctoral studies also collaborates with her on the professional development skill sets, skill 21 for the undergrads. I'll skip Cathy Wong. Valérie Patreau, diplômée en génie aérospatial et titulaire d'une maîtrise en sciences appliquées de l'École polytechnique de Montréal. Madame Patreau a passé plus de 13 ans dans le monde industriel montréalais. Alors, c'est notre experte en génie. Et elle est revenue comme chercheur universitaire il y a 6 ans. Elle dirige une équipe de chercheurs et d'innovation durable à l'École polytechnique. Our next jury member is Didier Jean-François, an alumnus of McGill. So he's got a BSc in biology from McGill and an MBA from University of Notre Dame. He's a specialist in biotech pharma, and his core experiences are in R&D alliances. So he's doing licensing, R&D development, marketing, and a lot of our students who are in biomedical and pure and applied sciences are really looking forward to joining these types of endeavors. And so he's going to be a very worthwhile judge for us as an entrepreneur and as an innovator. Our next judge is Judith Ritter, who's already been here before as a judge. She liked it so much she's come back. She's an award-winning independent radio and print journalist who reports from Canada, China, India, Europe, and the Caribbean. So she's done science and technology, business, entertainment, international development. Her stories have appeared in print throughout North America and in China. And she's worked on many different levels. So in terms of communication, she's certainly an expert at how to get the nugget that needs to be translated for the general public. And our last judge is Susan Pollack. She manages the product line for Boeing commercial flight simulators at CAE, and she's a market leader in civil aviation training. She has more than 15 years experience in software and simulation, including artificial intelligence for computer-generated forces in simulation. So she holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from McGill and an executive MBA from Concordia's John Molson School of Business. So we've got our very varied background of our evaluators. Is this Kathy? Bonjour. Alors, notre dernière membre du jury est arrivée. Madame Catherine Wong est diplômée en droit et elle est devenue la première femme présidente du conseil municipal de la ville de Montréal comme représentante du district Pierre McGill. Elle a beaucoup travaillé dans les conseils d'administration et elle a occupé le poste d'agent de développement jeunesse pour les YMCA du Québec et pour le Jeune Conseil de Montréal. Et elle siège aussi sur beaucoup de CA comme l'Office comités jeunesse et internationaux du Québec, du TH du CEP, ainsi que des comités consultatifs d'Élections Canada et MATV. Alors, nous sommes prêts à commencer. Et il y a 2 prix qu'on va donner. Alors, il y a le gagnant de ma thèse en 180 secondes. Et cette personne va participer à la finale nationale à Chicoutimi. The English one is winner of the English competition will represent McGill at the Canadian Association for Graduate Studies 3MT Eastern Regional Finals. And we're very happy to host the finals here at McGill for the first time. We'll also have a People's Choice Award. So you get to be heard, all of you. So pay as much attention as the judges, although the judges all have lots of evaluation sheets in front of them, and I guess lots of different criteria. But for the instructions for the public awards, People's Choice Award will be given to you at the end. So the criteria that we have seems very simple. And you can imagine why these students work months to make something that is so simple. It takes very, very hard work to communicate properly. So the point is for them to talk about the research, but to make it understandable to the general audience. After the last presenter, when the judges leave the room to deliberate, there'll be a short question and answer period. So we will not stop in between the presentations as they give their pitch for 3 minutes. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first presenter. Michael Dabia is in experimental medicine, and he's going to be, the title of his presentation is quite a mouthful, but I'm sure he's going to simplify it for us. So it's Parish of the Peroxisome, My Discovery and Destruction of a Hub in Cancer Metabolism. So Michael's project, he didn't start working on this, but it turned really into an obsession. And he says that he's really working very hard to understand what these organelles do in cancer. So this is the cell's garbage, but he has been working so hard on this that he dreams of peroxisomes, bakes cookies in the shape of peroxisomes, and he's really very pleased to be sharing his obsession with the rest of us. Michael?
It was Mark Twain that said, "The 2 most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you discover why." Now, picture yourself sitting across from your doctor. Your doctor tells you, "I'm sorry, but you have cancer. It's lymphoma. It'll take about a year of chemotherapy to deal with it." Your response? "What's lymphoma?" Well, that person sitting across from the doctor about 10 years ago was me. And in reference to Mark Twain's quote, the reason I believe I'm here today is to study the cancer that I survived. Now, let me take you on a little journey into the cell. Let's talk about this small compartment called the peroxisome. The key thing here is that it's intimately linked to the mitochondria, or the powerhouse of the cell. But just after its discovery, we thought it was useless, or just like a garbage bin in the cell. But it actually wasn't until about 20 to 30 years ago when we discovered, upon genetic analyses, that breaks in peroxisomal DNA actually correspond to severe childhood disorders, often resulting in lethality. But the cells affected by this were brain and liver in nature. So what does this even have to do with cancer? One thing we do know is that cancer is characterized by dysfunctional metabolic wiring. And the peroxisome is a bona fide metabolic compartment in the cell. So what I did is I took cancer cells and broke peroxisomal DNA in them. And what I found is that those cells started to die. And chemotherapy-resistant cells also started to die when I broke peroxisomal DNA. And in patients, most strikingly, who don't respond to chemotherapy, we found that they have very high levels of peroxisomes, indicating that this is a marker of chemotherapy resistance. So what I'm working on now is developing drugs to actually hit the peroxisome in cancer. So in reference to Mark Twain's quote, this is why I believe I'm here today. But something we can gather from this, apply to our own curiosity, to our own lives, or to our own research. If you want to know how something works, if it ain't broken, break it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So we're changing gears now. The next presenter is Robert Wu. He's in the Earth and Planetary Sciences, and he's been working at McGill for his PhD after doing a bachelor's degree in geology at Carleton. His passion is really the environment, mining industry, and he's doing research in sustainability and environmental monitoring in the industry settings. So he'd like to create tools that benefit mine reclamation projects in the Canadian North. Robert?
An entire forest composed of degraded and contaminated land. A river kilometers long dyed orange. These are the scars of North America's long mining history. And as our industry continued to move into our pristine Canadian North, what will happen to the land that's just left behind? It's somewhat of a murky picture. For our mines in Canada, 2/3 of the rock that we take from the ground will just simply become waste. And this waste rock is simply left at the surface of the mine in large piles. If these piles are left unchecked, they could release huge amounts of acidity and heavy metals to the surrounding environment. It's common now for Canadian companies to put a soil cover on top of these piles, kind of like a thick sponge, to absorb water, rainwater, that would otherwise react with the waste material and discharge that waste to the surrounding environment. Good afternoon, my name is Rob, and I'm a PhD student in geology, which means I love to play in the dirt, but not so much in contaminated dirt, which is why my project revolves around creating a measurement tool to measure the effectiveness of these soil covers in preventing rainwater from reaching the waste material. The problem with the measurement tools that we have now is that they're really made for the agricultural sector, for farmers. And agricultural soil is a lot softer and more forgiving and less toxic compared to a proper mine waste pile. So my measurement tool has to be stronger and more resilient. And my measurement tool of choice comes from an unlikely source: light and optics. I am fascinated with fiber optic cables. These cables are like regular telephone cables, but transmits information in the form of light instead of electricity. We installed these fiber optic cables at a mine in eastern Quebec to see how their cover prevents rainwater from reaching their mine waste. The light in the fiber optic cable will change energy depending on the temperature of the soil. But think of it more like running outside in March with your sweater on. You'll probably not feel as energetic if your sweater was wet. In a way, the light in the fiber optic cable will react the same in cold, wet soil. So we can measure how effective the cover is by looking at how this light reacts in that soil sweater or in that waste rock sweater, where we hope to see all of that cold, wet water remain on top and the waste rock below to remain warm and dry. And we do this because mines have allowed us to benefit from the materials that we use to make bicycles, from the materials that we use to make solar panels and wind turbines, and even in the ingredients we put in our dog and cat food. With my fiber optic technology, we can supplement these mining practices with actual steps in storing and monitoring the waste that we do not use. So our generation of geologists can play in uncontaminated and clean dirt. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I think we have to have the students come back in about 3 years' time and give us another 3 minutes at the end of their project, because it's been, first two have been fascinating, and I'm sure it's going to continue that way. L'étudiante qui va nous présenter maintenant, c'est Gabrielle Hull, qui est dans le département de génétique humaine. Elle est originaire de Trois-Rivières. Elle a complété un bac en sciences biologiques à l'Université de Montréal. Depuis 2014, elle poursuit ses études graduées en génétique humaine sous la supervision du Dr Guy Rouleau de l'Institut neurologique de Montréal. Et elle développe son expertise en analyse pangénomique des maladies complexes. Gabrielle?
Avez-vous déjà remarqué que les traits des personnages de la bande dessinée Peanuts ne sont jamais vraiment droits? Regardez le sourire de Charlie Brown. Eh bien, ce n'est pas un hasard ni un choix artistique, mais plutôt parce que son créateur, M. Charles Schulz, était atteint d'une maladie neurologique, le tremblement essentiel. Cette maladie se caractérise par une oscillation involontaire et incontrôlable d'une partie du corps. Ça affecte principalement les mains, mais peut aussi toucher la tête, la voix et les membres inférieurs. Mais Gabrielle, vous vous demandez, est-ce la même chose que la maladie de Parkinson? Eh bien non, tremblement essentiel se manifeste seulement lors d'un mouvement volontaire, contrairement à Parkinson, qui lui est présent en tout temps, y compris au repos. Bien que de 2 à 3 fois plus commun que le Parkinson, les causes à l'origine de tremblements essentiels sont très peu connues. Il n'existe présentement aucun traitement et les peu de médicaments permettant de contrôler les symptômes sont souvent peu efficaces. C'est pourquoi le but de ma thèse est d'identifier les mécanismes moléculaires à l'origine de la maladie. Pour ce faire, j'étudie la génétique. On sait que le tremblement essentiel a une importante composante héréditaire. Il n'est pas rare que plusieurs membres d'une même famille en soient affectés. J'étudie donc ces familles et j'essaie de trouver ce que les patients ont en commun qui n'est pas présent chez les non-affectés. Je cherche des différences que l'on appelle des variants génétiques à l'intérieur de leur ADN. Chaque personne a en moyenne 10 millions de variants. Vous, moi, votre voisin, votre cousine, même vous, là, en avant. Déterminer lequel de ces variants est à l'origine de la maladie est un peu comme chercher une aiguille dans une botte de foin. Je dois donc prioriser mon étude à l'aide d'outils bioinformatiques, car si je devais caractériser chacun des 10 millions de variants, mon doctorat durerait pas mal plus que 5 ans. Dans le cadre de mon projet, après avoir étudié 244 personnes issues de 14 familles différentes, j'ai priorisé 6 variants. J'en suis présentement à l'étape de répliquer ces découvertes dans une cohorte de patients indépendantes. Bon, c'est bien beau tout ça, génétique, ADN, variants, hérédité, mais quels seront les impacts sur la vie des patients? Mieux connaître l'origine moléculaire de la maladie en facilitera le diagnostic. Aussi, la génétique, c'est le premier pas afin d'imaginer de nouvelles stratégies thérapeutiques. J'espère ainsi que mon étude facilitera le développement de nouveaux médicaments afin de mieux contrôler les symptômes de tremblement et peut-être ainsi redonner le sourire à Charlie Brown.
Merci, Gabrielle. Merci pour le diapositive. Our next presenter is Scott Bell. And Scott is a PhD candidate in the integrated program in neuroscience. His interest has been in stem cells and the use of stem cells. And this started in his undergrad education at the University of Victoria. When he moved to McGill, he started his PhD looking for ways to improve our ability to generate these stem cells. Scott?
What if I told you that every day you are literally pissing science away? Hi, my name is Scott, and I work on turning urine into stem cells, cells that can be made into any type of cell in the body. I'm sure you've all heard some of the hype surrounding stem cells, that you can use them to treat disease, understand development, or maybe even extend our lifespans. And there is tremendous opportunity for stem cells to improve our lives. But there are also tremendous obstacles that we need to overcome in order for that to become a reality. One big problem is how we acquire stem cells. In all of us, in you and me, there are cells that we can use to make stem cells. But we can't use just any type of cell. We need to use cells that can survive, divide, and thrive when we take them out of our bodies. And the problem is that those types of cells reside deep in our tissues, like the pulp of our teeth and the deepest layers of our skin. As a result, most stem cells today are generated from cells that can only be acquired if a surgeon goes in and cuts a chunk of skin out of someone. That's expensive, it's invasive, it requires people to go to a hospital, it almost always leaves a scar, and it is, unsurprisingly, a difficult thing to convince people to do sometimes, especially children. So my lab mates and I thought there must be a better way. So we went on a scavenger hunt, looking for different types of cells to make into stem cells. In this, I was half in the role of scientist, but half in the role of guinea pig as well. I had my skin sampled, I had my blood drawn, I had my cheek swabbed, I had my hair plucked. But everywhere we looked, we found cells that either refused to grow or were too difficult to purify. Nothing seemed to work. Until I peed in a cup. You see, in every drop of urine, there are a few cells that have been scraped off the bladder and the kidneys and the piping that connects them all. Those cells are known to be exceptionally easy to isolate and purify, but they're not usually considered to be a good type of cell to make stem cells out of because they die very quickly in urine and they don't grow outside of the body. However, I found that adding a few chemicals to protect the cells increases their lifespan from a few hours in urine to days, and that by mimicking the environment the cells experience inside the body, they're able to easily grow outside of it. This allows us to have a cheaper, non-surgical, and more effective method of generating stem cells. This protocol has already been used to study neurodevelopmental diseases, to model 3 different types of drug responses, and to generate stem cells from 26 patients across Canada. If nothing else, I think it shows how opportunity in science can lurk in unexpected places. Who knows what scientific wealth can go wasted every day? Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Our next presenter is Sherry McDowell from physiology. She's a master's student working at the Goodman Cancer Research Center in the lab of Dr. Daniela Quayle. Her passion for cancer research began from when she was very young, as she knew many people afflicted with the disease. And this continued throughout her education in Barbados and during her undergraduate degree that she completed at McGill. So she's hoping to share this passion and to make the audience of the 3MT competition understand why she's so thrilled to be working on this. Sherry?
Unfortunately, only 1 out of 14 of us will win this competition today. But even more unfortunate is statistically, 7 out of 14 of us will get cancer during our life. So you're more likely to get cancer than to win today. But don't panic. Most people don't die simply because they have cancer. Take breast cancer patients. They don't die from the tumor in their breast. They die because that tumor spreads to vital organs like the lung or brain. So how does cancer spread to other organs? And can we figure out how to stop it? A surgeon, Stephen Paget, once proposed that the spread and growth of cancer mirrors the spread and growth of seeds in soil. Seeds will only grow in soil that has the right balance of nutrients and water to support their growth. Similarly, cancer cells will only spread to other organs if those organs have the right balance of conditions to support their growth. So cancer, seeds, organs, soil. But everyone's garden is unique. Many factors affect the composition of our soil, and one of these factors is obesity. My name is Sherry McDowell, and my research explores how obesity affects breast cancer spread to other organs. You see, all cancer patients have cancer cells circulating in their blood at any given time. but it is rare that one of these cells forms a tumor in another organ. Yet, in obese patients, this is more likely to occur. Why? This is what my research intends to find out. Cancer cells mainly travel in the body through blood vessels, and my research shows that obesity changes how leaky blood vessels are in organs such as the lung. Not only does this deliver more cancer cells to these organs, but it delivers more nutrients to the soil of that new site. So when cancer cells arrive, they arrive where conditions for growth are just right. Using 3D bioprinting, I'm making artificial blood vessels to test how exactly fat helps cancer spread and how this can be stopped. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, this research doesn't apply to me, I'm in great shape, I'll let you in on a secret. 20% of thin people have the same soil as obese people. This means the environment in their body resembles someone who is obese. Turns out, their risk of cancer spreading is also high. So my research actually benefits a lot of people, because although we can't change our genetics, we can change the condition of our garden. So when spring is here and you see flowers growing, remember our knowledge of cancer is also growing. And scientists like myself are working to ensure that even though 7 out of 14 may get cancer, 0 will die from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Next speaker is Jay Olson from the Department of Psychiatry. Jay has an unusual background, is a magician. And this is what he started, he was fascinated by it when he was a young child. And he started his career as a professional magician. And then when he was participating in a psychology class, he noticed that many of the ideas that were taught in that class were similar to what he had learned in magic. So this led him to research the psychology behind magic. And he's now using this knowledge as a magician to enhance healing and the placebo effect, which is quite large in the general population. So, Jay?
Matthias, 7 years old, was our first participant. He had suffered from migraines 2 to 3 days a week for years. But after 1 hour of our procedure, he stopped having migraines for 6 months. This is the power of placebos. My name's Jay Olson, and I study how to maximize placebo effects. Usually when we think of placebos, we think of a sugar pill that has no active ingredient but can still have profound effects. But placebos can be any kind of inactive treatment, like an injection with no active ingredient, or even a machine that does nothing, but you still believe that it can help you. Now, placebos are the most studied procedure worldwide because they're often used as the control group, but they're one of the least well understood. We do know some factors that make placebos stronger. So complicated or expensive-looking procedures work better than simpler ones. So machines work better than injections, which work better than sugar pills. Children experience more effects than adults do. In my research, I combined all these different factors in order to use placebos not as a control, but as a treatment. Right now, we're focusing on 2 disorders: migraines, so headaches, and ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, characterized by fidgeting and reduced self-control. Now, these disorders don't have ideal treatments. Often, they require expensive drugs that can have big side effects, even changing your personality. So we take children with these disorders, and we introduce them to a placebo machine. It's actually a broken brain scanner that looks and acts like a real one. Now, we tell children, although this machine is completely inactive, it can help your brain heal itself through the power of placebos. In fact, placebos work even if you know that they're placebos. So we put children inside the scanner for about 15 minutes, and we give them positive suggestions that this procedure will help reduce their symptoms and improve their strengths. A month later, we follow up with the families. 90% of them report improvements in their kids, from reduced fidgeting to better sleep. And in some cases, children report massive, lasting improvements, like Mateus, who a year and a half after his initial session is still only having 10% of the migraines he used to. Now, these results are still at their early stages, but we're hoping to develop new placebo-based treatments that are safe, effective, and have no side effects. In doing so, we can harness the power of placebos, and more generally, the power of the mind. Thank you.
I hope you're all enjoying these presentations, and I think this amphitheater is a perfect place when we can have a presenter right in the middle. I feel as though we're from the last century, or 2 centuries ago, participating in this. Notre prochaine étudiante est Fanny Duhan, étudiante en histoire. Elle a obtenu un baccalauréat en études classiques et une maîtrise en littérature française à l'Université de Montréal. Entre 2 couches à changer et 8 tasses de café, comme elle le dit. Elle fait maintenant un doctorat. Elle est en train de travailler sur son doctorat au département d'histoire de l'Université McGill. Elle s'intéresse à l'échange linguistique entre les Français et les Hurons de la Nouvelle-France et comment cela s'est traduit à l'écrit. Fanny?
Vous êtes-vous déjà demandé quelle était l'histoire des livres que vous achetez? Non, je ne parle pas du récit que racontent les pages du livre, mais bien l'histoire derrière la production du document. Par exemple, de savoir que J.K. Rowling a connu plusieurs échecs avant de faire publier Harry Potter et de devenir millionnaire. Dans un registre un peu moins récent d'histoire du livre, prenons un exemple complètement au hasard. Ah oui, tiens, mon sujet de thèse. J'étudie des dictionnaires manuscrits, écrits par des religieux, des missionnaires jésuites, dans les années 1600 et 1700. La particularité de ces documents? Ils sont bilingues, à la fois en français et en Huron-Wendat, une langue autochtone. C'est un sujet intéressant parce que les dictionnaires contiennent énormément d'informations sur les relations entre autochtones et français et sur la culture et la langue des Huron-Wendat, mais personne n'a encore étudié leur production. Je vais donc vous raconter ma thèse, à savoir l'histoire de ces manuscrits depuis l'apprentissage du Huron-Wendat par les Jésuites jusqu'à ce que ces dictionnaires entrent dans les bibliothèques où on les trouve encore aujourd'hui. Mes questions centrales, comment est-ce que les Jésuites ont appris la langue? Comment est-ce qu'ils ont écrit les dictionnaires et où ces manuscrits ont circulé? Comme toute bonne histoire, commençons par « Il était une fois ». Vers l'an 1600, le Québec d'aujourd'hui et une partie de l'Ontario, entre autres, étaient occupés par diverses nations autochtones ayant chacune leur langue. Puis sont arrivés les Français, dont les Jésuites, qui voulaient convertir au catholicisme toutes les nations d'Amérique, incluant les Huron-Wendat. Petit problème, ils ne pouvaient pas parler leur langue. Entrons maintenant au cœur de l'action. Les Jésuites doivent communiquer. Comment font-ils selon vous? Eh bien, ils font des gestes. Ils demandent l'aide de traducteurs. Mais pour arriver à se débrouiller seuls, ils se tournent vers les personnes qui parlent mieux la langue, les Huron-Wendat eux-mêmes. Petit à petit, grâce à cette collaboration naissent des notes, des brouillons et enfin, de vrais dictionnaires. Une fois écrits, ces dictionnaires ont eu une vie palpitante. Ils ont voyagé entre les Grands Lacs et la région autour de Québec. Certains se sont perdus, mais les autres ont été copiés et recopiés par des missionnaires successifs qui ont tous dû apprendre le Huron-Wendat et n'y sont jamais parvenus sans l'aide des Autochtones. Oui, même avec des dictionnaires. Finalement, le dénouement. En 1800, c'est la fin des Jésuites canadiens pour un moment. La fin des Jésuites, mais pas la fin des dictionnaires. Ces derniers sont remis à des familles Huron-Wendat avant d'être vendus à des collectionneurs ou des établissements comme l'Université Laval. En somme, mes recherches, se basant sur l'analyse de documents anciens, dévoilent en partie l'histoire des dictionnaires Huron-Wendat. Cette histoire, marquée par la collaboration, la colonisation et une grande circulation, offre une nouvelle fenêtre sur notre passé. Alors, la prochaine fois que vous verrez un livre, dites-vous que son histoire pourrait être un bon sujet de thèse. Fin.
I don't know about you, but I'm really learning a lot in just a few minutes. Our next speaker is Sarashri Shinde from Experimental Surgery. She completed her Bachelor of Science in Neuroscience at the University of Toronto, and she was fascinated by cancer. So we've got another talk on cancer. She's currently completing her master's degree in experimental surgery at McGill, where she's trying to understand how cancer cells gain resistance to the treatment radiation therapy. So she's very happy to be participating in this competition and to be able to tell you about the work that she's doing in the lab.
So a kid gets bit by a radioactive spider, gains spider-related powers, and before you know it, he's swinging on webs through New York City trying to save the world. Story sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? That's right, I'm talking about the one and only Spider-Man. Hi everyone, my name is Thrashri, and today I'd like to introduce you to the neutrophil, our immune system's very own Spider-Man. You see, neutrophils are really cool immune cells that can actually release their DNA by forming a sticky web that captures pathogens, similar to how Spider-Man releases his webs to capture his enemies. But wait, there's a catch. Just like every superhero story, there's always that one indestructible villain. And in our case, that's a cancer cell. Many cancer patients receive radiation therapy. This means using high beams of radiation to shrink and kill tumor cells. But tumor cells are really smart, and they can find ways to escape. My research focuses on understanding how tumor cells gain resistance to radiation, and I think I have an idea. I have identified a key protein that's released by tumors that actually causes neutrophils to start releasing more nets. Now, what does this mean? You see, under normal conditions, neutrophils do a really good job at trapping tumor cells, but as I mentioned earlier, the cancer cell is our indestructible villain. Recent studies have shown that tumor cells can feed off of these webs of DNA, and they can use it to transport to different sites of our body, ultimately spreading cancer. Basically, when tumor cells sense that they're in danger, they find a way to fight back. So, if we want to increase the efficacy of radiation, we need to target this process. What's really fascinating is I've actually tested this out in mice, and I saw that by blocking the protein and by decreasing nets, mice responded much better to radiation. This gives me hope that we can eventually translate this work to humans. So, the next time that you think of your immune system, I want you all to remember that you have little tiny Spider-Mans, the neutrophil, that's constantly trying to fight the bad guy so that you can stay healthy. Thank you for your time.
Our next presenter is Matthew Lapper from the Integrated Program in Neuroscience. He's a master's student in the laboratory of Dr. Arezou Jahani Azel at the Lady Davis Institute. He grew up in rural New Brunswick, where his passion for science took him to the University of New Brunswick for a Bachelor of Biochemistry. And now he's working on development of novel therapies and improving our standard care for brain diseases. So he's very happy to again be sharing his results with this audience. Matthew?
One year. What would you do with 1 year? Would you travel? Maybe just hang out with friends and family? Try to finish that degree you've been working on? Or maybe like Gordon Downey and the Tragically Hip, you get the band back together for one more tour. My name's Matthew Lapper, and in our lab, we work on glioblastoma, a highly aggressive primary brain tumor with no effective treatment. The mean survival rate with this disease is 16 months. And part of the problem is there's a small population of cells called brain tumor stem cells. And with just one or two of these cells, we can generate a whole new tumor. As a result, when you cut out the tumor, a few of these cells remain. When you treat with radiation therapy, a few of these cells remain, and a new tumor can form. So what we need are new targets. And my lab thinks we found one in the oncostatin M receptor. Think of it as a messenger. It sits on the outside of the cell, listens to the environment, and then shouts instructions down the line. And in this case, the instruction is rather simple: grow. I mean, that's essentially the problem with cancer cells, isn't it? These little guys just don't know when to stop growing. And we found if we can disrupt this message, our cells grow a lot slower, and the tumors they form are much smaller. But what we don't know is why, and that's where I step in. See, I study metabolism, the production of energy. You see, when things are growing very, very rapidly, they need a lot of energy. I mean, you can hang out with a 7-year-old for a few hours, and you'll figure that out pretty quick. Right? So one of the ways we look at this is through mitochondria. I mean, you frequently have heard these described as the powerhouse of the cell, just even recently, actually. And essentially what they do is they generate a huge amount of energy for the cell. Right? And when we treat with a drug to induce our receptor, we see our mitochondria elongate. And you can see this over my shoulder in red on that neuron. We get these nice long strands of mitochondria, which is indicative of an increased ability to produce energy. But again, we don't really know why. So when something's being uncooperative and you're trying to get answers out of it, well, what do? Well, naturally, I just kind of hold all these guys hostage, and I poison them in different ways until they tell me what I want to know. Right? And by doing this, we can knock out different parts of this complex machinery that is metabolism. And by identifying what particular parts our receptor is targeting, what particular message is being shouted down the line to result in this upregulation of growth, we can identify targets. And when we identify a target, something we can treat, then maybe I get to start off this presentation saying, what do you do with 2 years? Or what do you do with 5 years? 10 years? I'm quite confident that soon, before too long, I'll get to stand up and hopefully not ask that question at all. Thank you very much.
I think we've had 4 presentations on cancer and a lot of hope. Thank you. Next presenter is Mark Kaji from parasitology. He's doing his PhD at the Institute of Parasitology at the McDonald campus, and he's interested in drug discovery and neuropharmacology to study drug activity and drug resistance in parasitic worms. So you can see him in nature, where he's got the beautiful campus of McDonald College that he can take advantage of, and also his superb labs there at the Institute of Parasitology. Mark?
All right. I want to start this off by saying that vampires do exist, okay, people? They're real. I've seen them. They're called hookworms. They drink your blood, and they turn you into zombies incapable of regular human work. Except that these vampires live inside of your body. It takes a lot more than any mere wooden stake to kill them. Marcus Kaji, PhD candidate, vampire hunter. I got 3 rules for hunting vampires. Rule number 1 is know your battleground. So hookworms are parasitic nematodes that live in the soil and literally chew their way through your flesh into your small intestine. This is where they drink your blood, causing anemia, malabsorption of nutrients. But like a good vampire, they don't usually kill their prey. No. Rule number 2, know why you fight. Chronic infection causes severe reduction in the quality of life in humans and animals infected and causes billions of dollars in lost productivity every single year. And if you think I'm exaggerating, on the left are 2 brothers, aged 17 and 21. The older brother weighs 60 pounds less than his younger brother, and he's very malnourished because he was infected with hookworm at a young age, and he lived in a time when drug treatment simply didn't exist. So rule number 3 for hunting vampires, and this is my favorite, know your weapons. So nowadays we have 2 or 3 different kinds of drugs for treatment, but the problem is that we have drug resistance cropping up against all of them. So to combat this drug resistance, we have to ask the question, how do these drugs even work in the first place? All right, well, when a worm wants to move, it sends a signal from one neuron to another in the form of a chemical message or a key that's released from the first neuron that binds to its lock on the second neuron, or the receptor. You open the lock, you propagate the signal, and muscles contract. Good. But you have a drug that overactivates or blocks that lock. You now interrupt that signal, paralyze the worm, and you kick it from the host. So this is where I come in. I study previously unidentified receptors from hookworms. I cut and paste them from the worm into an isolated system, to study them alone one at a time. And then I apply drugs to see how differences in the changes of the shape of the key influence how they interact with the lock. And what we've been finding is that these hookworm receptors respond quite uniquely to certain drugs compared to other worms and parasites. And by comparing different species of hookworm receptors now, we can improve current drug treatment. If you look at what drug affects which receptor from which hookworm best, or even identify new keyholes in those locks to aid in future drug development, because having a wider drug arsenal and a better understanding of how they work is absolutely vital to controlling these global infection rates. And at the end of the day, I would like to live in a world where these vampires are truly creatures of myth. Thank you, and good hunting.
Thank you, Mark. Our next speaker is Aren Bezjian, who's in chirurgie expérimentale. Alors, ça va être en français, je m'excuse. Elle est un candidat au doctorat dans le département de chirurgie expérimentale en médecine à l'Université McGill. Et son travail est basé sur la réhabilitation des enfants malentendants grâce à des implants auditifs à conduction osseuse. Alors, il a reçu une bourse des fonds de recherche du Québec et pour ses études en maîtrise et aussi pour le doctorat. Il a débuté ses projets de doctorat à Utrecht, je pense qu'en co-tutelle aux Pays-Bas. Alors, il va nous présenter ses études qu'il est en train de faire dans son doctorat. Aren?
Avez-vous déjà entendu votre propre voix sur un enregistrement et vous êtes demandé pourquoi elle paraît si étrange? Pour répondre à cette question, il faut d'abord comprendre comment nous entendons. Le son stimule l'oreille humaine de deux manières, en voyageant dans l'air et à travers nos os. À cet instant même, ma voix résonne dans cette salle, ce qui permet à mes oreilles ainsi qu'à vos oreilles de capter les ondes sonores et d'entendre par air. Or, présentement, je suis le seul qui m'entend aussi à travers mes os. Ceci est permis grâce à ma voix qui fait vibrer les structures osseuses qui entourent mon oreille interne. Au quotidien, nous sommes habitués de percevoir notre propre voix par les deux voies auditives, air et os, tandis que sur un enregistrement, le son de votre voix est émis exclusivement par air, et c'est pour cela qu'elle paraît étrange. Saviez-vous que Beethoven est devenu sourd à l'âge de 26 ans et malgré ses pertes auditives a réussi à composer des grands chefs-d'œuvre? Comment, vous vous demandez sûrement? Tout simplement en posant sa tête sur son piano. C'est grâce à de telles observations que les implants auditifs à conduction osseuse sont nés et ont changé la vie de centaines de milliers de personnes à travers le monde. Cet implant contient un processeur auditif avec un microphone qui capte les ondes sonores dans l'air, les convertit en vibrations pour ensuite les transmettre par l'os crânienne jusqu'à l'oreille interne. Ceci permet à des individus autrefois incapables de percevoir des sons aériens d'entendre. Le succès de ces implants est fortement dépendant de l'ostéo-intégration, la connexion entre la surface de l'implant et l'os. Mes projets de recherche tentent de répondre à des questions telles que pourquoi cette ostéo-intégration est inexistante chez certaines personnes? Pouvons-nous modifier cette ostéo-intégration pour améliorer la qualité du son? Au laboratoire de sciences auditives de McGill, nous cherchons constamment à optimiser la capacité naturelle du corps humain à entendre à travers nos os, afin que les personnes avec des déficiences auditives peuvent mieux percevoir l'univers qui les entoure et qui sait, peut-être même écouter une composition de Beethoven avec toute sa subtilité. Merci.
Our next presenter is Karina Voleski. She's in epidemiology, biostatistics, and occupational health. She's really didn't start out wanting to be an epidemiologist. I guess most people don't. But then once you start getting interested in health policy and public health, that's where you end up directing yourself. So this, her interest drew her to the lab of Dr. Eduardo Franco, where she's researching how infections contribute to cancer. So she's doing quite a bit of work on public health. Karina?
Maybe you've heard someone say, I wish there was a vaccine to beat cancer. They could have been telling you about a family member's struggle with cancer, or more generally commenting on cancer's considerable impact. But what if instead of a vaccine to cure cancer, there was a vaccine to prevent it from ever starting? Now, what if I told you this vaccine already exists, and that there's more than one? Let's take a step back and think of causes of cancer. You might think of smoking, chemicals, genetics. Infections are probably not one of the first things to come to mind, yet some of the most important risk factors for cancer are infections. So we know infections cause cancer, but in North America, we don't know how many. Is it hundreds, thousands? I'm happy to say my research answered this question. I found that almost 5,000 cancers diagnosed in 2012 among people like us, Canadian adults, could have been prevented. In the United States, with its much larger population, I found that there were over 53,000 preventable cancers diagnosed in 2014. I say these cancers could have been prevented because they began as preventable infections. An infection like human papillomavirus, HPV, causes virtually all cases of cervical cancer, and it can not only be reduced, but eliminated with the HPV vaccine. Hepatitis B virus, that can lead to liver cancer, has had a vaccine available since the 1980s. These infections and 5 more found in North America can cause cancer in 18 different sites of the body. I began this research with more than 2,000 studies. I then selected data from only the best ones and used it to calculate the number of cancers attributable to each cancer-causing infection, as well as how these cases are distributed among men and women. I found that overall, women bore a disproportionately large share of the preventable cancer burden. At this point, you might be thinking, this is interesting information, but 2012 and 14 have passed. This is why my next step is to project into the future how many cancers could be avoided 20 years from now if interventions like increasing vaccine coverage were implemented today. This would provide public health decision makers with the information they need to prioritize proven interventions that are capable of stopping cancer before it ever starts. So, next time you hear someone say, I wish there was a vaccine to beat cancer, you can confidently reply, there already is. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Karina. Our next speaker is Rami Ghanem from Civil Engineering and Applied Mechanics. He's working on construction materials, and his research involves developing a new test method for concrete known as pressure tension. Rami?
Have you ever left a bottle of water in the freezer and then forgotten about it? Yes, right, okay. I've done it too. And what happens is the water inside, when it freezes, expands. It's the only material that does that. And that expansion causes a pressure that cracks the bottle or deforms it. So this same phenomenon can be found in concrete. In fact, it caused a bridge to collapse in Laval in 2006. There were 5 fatalities and 6 serious injuries. So it can get pretty bad. Water freezing, it's pretty dangerous. So I'm a civil engineer. And if I have a bridge, I want to make sure that water is not getting in, not expanding, and not causing damage. So how do I do that? Well, I test it. I test the bridge by taking out a small core, which is a small cylinder. It's called a core. And I break the core. The strength of the core can tell me the strength of my bridge, or we can actually just correlate the two. It's very similar. So the current way we break cores is by squishing them from above and below. And then they split sideways down the middle. But the weakest point may not be down the middle. It may be on the right side or on the left side somewhere. If that was the case, we didn't test for that. So what would be a better way would be to test the whole area of that cylinder and to find that weakest point, because we tested everything, not just the line. Well, my team and I are developing a test that does exactly that. It's called pressure tension. Pressure tension involves injecting air within that core, and the result is an expansion that pulls it apart from the inside out, just as if it was water expanding as it freezes. So far, our results show that after just one cycle of water freezing, damaging the concrete, and melting, we can find the damage. We can detect it. While other tests, like splitting tension and commonly used tests, take about 15 or more cycles before they can find that damage. So this is good. But it's a new test, and a new test means we don't really understand it fully. So my job in specific is to find out how much water inside the core and how many holes for the water to get in affects the results. And once we figure this out, we'll be able to standardize this test so that all the labs across the world will be able to find the weakest part of their concrete. So what does this mean for you? Well, when you're driving along a bridge and you get slightly worried sometimes, you shouldn't, all right? Because you'll know that the weakest point has been found, repairs have been done early, and the bridge is safe. So when water gets in and expands, it won't cause a huge mess like the bridge in Laval and like the bottle in your freezer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So our last speaker is Hannah Alstorf from epidemiology also. And she's passionate about global health, and she's working on tuberculosis and on the fight against tuberculosis. And that's what she's going to be presenting to us on the diagnosis, screening, and preventive treatment for people affected by the bacterium.
I have a question. Do you know which infectious disease kills the most people in the world each year? It's not HIV and AIDS, as you might have thought. It's actually tuberculosis, or TB, as it's known. Hi, I'm Hannah, and I'm a doctoral candidate in epidemiology, and as you've probably gathered by now, my research is focused on tuberculosis, specifically what is called latent tuberculosis infection. So this is when someone's been infected with the TB bacteria, but they aren't yet sick or contagious. It's essentially like lying dormant and sleeping, and so the term is dormant in medical lingo. Anyhow, so as you see on my slide, 2 billion people in the world, or 1/4 of the world's population, have latent TB infection. They form this massive reservoir, which is represented by the base of that iceberg. From this reservoir, 10 to 15% of people will go on to develop active TB disease, becoming the 10 million cases that we see around the world. But there is some good news. People with latent TB infection can get preventive treatment, which stops the TB from becoming active disease. And we need healthcare systems that prioritize delivery of preventive treatment. So that's where my research comes in. I'm working in 5 countries, Brazil, Benin, Ghana, Indonesia, and Vietnam, where there are a lot of people with active TB. I am trying to get healthcare workers to increase the amount of time they spend giving preventive treatment to family members of someone who has active TB. To do this, I'm using a really simple method. With the help of local researchers, we write down minute by minute all the activity that a healthcare worker does throughout their day. Then I look at specific categories of work and particularly focus on the time that is spent on latent TB services. From this time, I can figure out how much it actually costs to give preventive treatment. My goal is to demonstrate that healthcare systems will actually save money by increasing preventive treatment, because This actually helps them to avoid treating extra cases of active TB disease, which is costly, it takes a long time, and more importantly, it's really hard for patients. Preventive treatment will actually shrink the base of that iceberg, the reservoir of latent TB infection. This will stop active TB disease globally and ultimately make the tip of that iceberg disappear completely. Thank you.
I think we need a big hand for everyone. This was amazing. I'm going to ask the judges to leave for their deliberation. And I don't know how long they're going to be gone. I think this is going to be difficult. It's going to be somewhat of a little fight, I think, depending on personal choices. And once they leave, we're going to open the People's Choice Award voting. Alors, préparez-vous pour le prix du public. Does everyone have a ballot? Est-ce que vous avez tout ce qu'il vous faut pour voter? Yeah, okay. Our contestants, yeah, everyone.
And our two assistants, Mina and take your ballot.
Okay, so you simply check off the box next to the name of the presenter on the paper ballot that you received with the program. Pour ceux qui regardent la compétition en ligne, vous pouvez voter pour le prix du public via le lien présenté dans la description sous la vidéo. Have we opened it? Do we know if we've opened the link? So how long is it open for?
For the next 25 minutes.
Okay, 25 minutes, the voting is open online. I think there's someone who needs it up there. Someone needs it up there, I think. Someone needs a ballot. Do we have ballots for up there? Yeah, okay. Okay, I'll give a couple more minutes for the voting, and then we're going to open the floor for questions from the audience. Too hard.
I know.
It's really too hard.
Jonathan. Jonathan.
I think we're going to start the questions because we heard such amazing talks. So whoever is asked the question, please come to the front because we do have microphones so that everyone can hear you. So I had a question from Michael. I'm a biochemist. I didn't know peroxisomes had DNA. So can you tell me more about it? Is it genomic DNA? Is it, or is it like mitochondrial?
No, so you want me to just hold?
Just leave it, okay.
So basically, what I did just to simplify the presentation was we actually did genetic silencing and a technique called CRISPR. Basically, you can disrupt the DNA corresponding to peroxisomes. So we actually went into the genome and did it. But to simplify the presentation, rather than explaining a complicated genetic technique, we also did silencing of RNA. Because of the limitations of time, I said that we broke the DNA.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I had a huge lack in my background. Yes? We have a question up there. Jay, do you want to come down?
Okay, so the question was, how do placebos work even if they know that it's a placebo? And there's this field called open label placebo. And this is when you give somebody a placebo, either a pill or some kind of treatment, and you tell them that it's a placebo. But placebos seem to work through a bunch of different functions. So part of it is just the expectations that you have. So when we brought the kids down into the hospital, we showed up in lab coats, and we had them wait at the front, and the assistant walked over, and we sort of did all these traditional medical rituals. And when people experience all of these rituals, they're expecting that they're going to heal from this. So sometimes it matters less what the pill is that you give them, and it matters less whether they know that there's nothing inside, because it's the entire environment, it's all of the cues, all of these medical rituals that help them heal, and not just the pill itself.
I think there was another question. Yeah.
Scott. Can you maybe compare contrast? So you're isolating these stem cells from, as you mentioned, from the kidney or bladder or some sort of digestion. Are they better for conditions from that region as opposed to sort of transition to the brain? Can you sort of compare and contrast that to just from other?
So just to be clear, you're asking like, are they better at like sources of us for stem cells than other areas like the brain, or?
No. So if you're using them, you know, there are multiple stem cells that are coming from a certain organ or tissue.
Yeah.
Are they better to treat elements from that tissue or organ?
Okay.
Or are they better for, like, what makes them better than just an iPS cell? If you're putting them in an exogenous location, what makes them better than something for that?
That's a great question. So the main factor for us in why urine is better is because it's way easier to acquire from a large amount of people, and it costs way less because you don't have to get surgeons involved, and it takes way less time. Theoretically, any source of stem cells that you can get from the body, whether that's from skin, from blood, from urine, if you keep it in a stem cell state long enough, should be suitable to do any kind of stem cell work you want. A lot of that time, that's not the reality because people can't keep stem cells indefinitely because it's very expensive. In order to help mitigate that cost, that's why that's where we started being very excited with urine in the first place, because to go from something like skin, where a lot of purification takes place, it usually will take us 2.5 months to go from an actual patient to a nice stem cell population that we can use. With urine, we can do it in about 3 weeks.
Okay, so I had a question. How much urine?
Okay, that's a great
for
question.
Each a little bit?
No, that's a great question. So when people start first working with urine in the context of like any kind of cell culture, you used to have like liters of urine in order to get any kind of appreciable amount of cells out of it, because the cells died and people didn't understand what they were really working with. And that's problematic because you can't get a liter of urine from someone usually unless you're following them throughout the day. But if you can enrich the cells that you're dealing with through cell survival and by actually processing the cells that you have to grow and differentiate, we currently work with about 80 milliliters, or your standard drug test kind of urine sample, which we can even get small kids to give a sufficient amount of cells.
Yeah, there's a question.
Scott, so you mentioned that you need some drugs or chemicals in order to increase the survival of the stem cells in urine.
Yes.
So how would that work? Would the person take the drugs, or would you put it in your culture?
Yeah, so, that was another big question. And actually, we had to partner with Stem Cell Technologies, which is a company out of Vancouver, for that. When we originally did it, we would just always have collection within our own lab. So we'd go and we would just put in these survival factors essentially into the urine, and then we could deal with it over the next couple of days. When we started dealing with patients that were located in some places very far away, like Vancouver, we actually went and developed pills that we could just issue along with the standard collection kit. Like sometimes if you have a very small child, it can be difficult to collect the urine, so you just package it up so that people pee, pop a pill in, and then you're good and set to go. You've increased the survival time long enough so that if you chill on ice, you can ship it to us in Montreal, and your cells aren't going to just die.
J'avais une question pour Fanny. Combien de temps est-ce que ça a pris à développer le premier dictionnaire? Et surtout quand ils ne pouvaient pas communiquer, les Huron-Wendat, avec les missionnaires? Est-ce que tu veux venir en bas?
Il y avait d'abord des traducteurs, comme des Truchements ou des Autochtones qui avaient été en France, par exemple, étaient revenus et pouvaient déjà communiquer. Il y avait aussi un autre ordre missionnaire avant les Jésuites qui s'appelle les Récollets, qui ont, pendant 10 ans, pas juste avec les Huron-Wendat, mais avec d'autres peuples autochtones aussi, comme réussi à faire les premiers dictionnaires. Quand les Jésuites sont arrivés, ils ont fait une collaboration avec les Récollets, collaboration aussi avec certains Truchements. Puis assez rapidement, c'était voilà, des notes un peu.
Alors, des échanges.
Des échanges, un peu des notes. Puis ensuite, ils ont très rapidement travaillé à un dictionnaire qui a été perdu et qui a probablement été raffiné parce que ceux qu'on a, c'est quand même bien fait.
D'accord.
Merci. Une autre question pour Fanny, peut-être, quand tu es là. Il se trouve où, présentement, les dictionnaires? Ils sont à Québec ou à Montréal? Ils sont dans les musées ou des archives?
Il y en a un à la John Carter Brown Library aux États-Unis. C'est le dernier dictionnaire à avoir entré dans une bibliothèque en 1931. Les autres, il y en a 5 environ aux archives du séminaire de Québec à Québec. Il y en a un aux archives de Saint-Sulpice à Montréal et il y en a 3 aux archives jésuites à Montréal aussi.
Tu les as consultés, c'est ça?
Oui. Ben, il m'en manque celui à la John Carter Brown Library cet été.
Bravo.
Merci.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Yeah.
I have a question for Sherry.
Sherry?
So you mentioned that obesity increases the permeability of the blood vessels in lungs, which is why it's causing it to develop there. Can you explain how that works and if it also appears in other organs as well?
Well, we don't know exactly how it's increasing the permeability or the leakiness, so that's the next step of what we're trying to figure out. And it could be altering things that are important for the structural integrity of the endothelium in blood vessels. And it does appear in other organs too. From this experiments that I've done, organs like the brain, different organs, it does definitely occur. I'm just focusing specifically on the lung because it's easy to focus on one place, but yeah, it does occur.
So maybe if you just stayed, so how do you do the 3D bioprinting?
Well, technically this is how it normally works. You would get like a metal wire, and the wire can have like any sort of diameter, and then if you seed cells, like kind of like underneath you have a chamber with cells, and the cells will grow around the metal wire, and then when you remove the metal wire, you have like a lumen and cells around it, and that's normally how it would work, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions? Peut-être une question pour Gabrielle? En 3 minutes, ça passe vite. Alors, la question, vous avez 6 variants déjà que vous avez identifiés et vous connaissez les gènes, je présume?
6 variants sont situés dans 3 gènes.
Dans 3 gènes.
Mais je ne peux pas en parler.
Non, ça va.
Donc, en gros, on a trouvé 3 familles différentes. Plusieurs familles qui ont 2 à la fois ont un variant dans le même gène. Donc, c'est pour ça que ces variants-là sont intéressants parce que je les ai trouvés à la fois dans 2 familles différentes.
C'est indépendant, oui.
Et ce n'est pas les mêmes variants, mais c'est le même gène.
C'est
pour ça que j'ai priorisé ces variants-là dans mon étude.
D'accord.
Josephine, People's Choice Award will close for polling in 2 minutes.
People's Choice Award will close in 2 minutes for people who are online. Just announcing it. 2 more minutes to get your votes in. All the paper votes have been tabulated already.
Je
Choix du peuple. En 2 minutes. Vous avez moins de 2 minutes pour voter. Yes.
Karina. Can we talk a little bit about, so there's like 100 different HPVs, and I know there's a few of them that cause certain cancer, that are associated with specific cancers. Is there vaccinations against each of the ones that are associated with cancer incidents? Or is there not, or is there, you probably know that, I don't really know the intricacies of those specific.
Yeah, so the big ones are 16 and 18, and the first vaccine came out, covered those two, then the next one covered the 4 key types, and the newest one, the non-valent one, covers 9 types, which covers essentially the gamut of the HPVs that cause the cancers associated with it.
And they're giving to women in their 20s, is that correct?
They can, but actually there's school-based programs starting like age 10, 11, 12 across the provinces, and there's some provinces that will start vaccinating boys as well.
Yes, Scott?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so as I understand for like infectious risk in cancer, which is like not ideal, is that infectious risk contributes very, very heavily to very specific cancers.
Yes.
And maybe a little bit in a very more base weight, some of them more to many other ones. Do you know what percentage of like the global cancer burden can be directly attributable to infectious?
Yeah, so over the years, starting in cancer incidents in 1990 up till the most recent year available, 2012, it's between 15% and 18% of the world's cancers are attributed. Canada, we're lucky, and same with the USA, because it's so developed, the proportion is much lower, below 5%. But some sub-Saharan African countries, it's as many as half of their cancers are attributed to infections.
And what kind of infections are really like making up that difference? Is it
HPV plays probably globally the largest role, and then that's the case in North America. Helicobacter pylori, it's a bacteria that can cause non-cardiac stomach cancer, is the second biggest one.
So if we know that HPV is causing most cervical cancer cases, you may not know this, but why hasn't it been like the vaccine implemented? Like children, once they're like 11, they get the vaccine.
They do, in school-based programs. Now, they are able to opt out of it, so if their parents say, we don't want that to happen, there's that option. So coverage rates aren't what we had hoped they would be. And part of that, increasing that, will be getting a message out that they will cover. It's strongly related to these cancers and highly transmissible. But
is this only in North America, or is this like
the vaccine?
Yeah,
but throughout the world. Not every country, but it's available in different formats. So school-based programming, not as much, but through different programs.
Sorry to keep bombarding with questions, but what's their coverage rate for like Canadians? Like you said that like their coverage rates are not what we would hope for because people opting out. Are a lot of people opting out? Like so that their children don't receive the vaccine is a very substantial part of the population.
I'm not sure about the total coverage across Canada and the United States, but it's falling below 80%, which was the initial target, and then some places like Toronto, the opting out is a lot higher, and it can fall well below that.
So what percentage of boys are vaccinated nowadays?
I don't know. Does anyone from, sorry to put you guys on the spot.
In the provinces, it's too early to tell because they just implemented it.
Okay.
It's lower than in girls usually because people are not as aware that HPV causes cancers in men, so they're not as prone to vaccine.
Okay. 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 Yeah, there's a question up there.
I have a question for Hannah. What's my protocol offense?
Yeah, we squeeze in everything.
Yeah, exactly. Hannah, what's the trigger between the big the enormous numbers of people in that reservoir of your iceberg and the tip of the iceberg?
Well, it depends. I mean, there's a lot of the clinical side that, to be honest, we're still working on understanding better why people go on to develop active disease, but a big component is lowered immune system responses. So people who are HIV positive, who primarily, in the rest of the world, like sub-Saharan Africa, where they're or Southeast Asia, that tends to be the biggest driver. Also, children who are under 5 are at much higher rates, are much more increased risk of developing active TB. So the World Health Organization currently prioritizes those two groups. So technically, people who are HIV positive and children under 5 who are in close contact with someone who has latent TB are supposed to be given preventive treatment, but it's essentially not happening. Like my research in Indonesia showed it's literally 0% of people's time right now is nobody's getting preventive treatment. So that's why we're trying to change that, particularly with kids.
Thanks. There are many more questions. Okay, one up there. Yes.
Do you know why you're not? Is it expensive to get preventive treatment?
No.
I'm from Brazil, and you mentioned Brazil.
Yeah, Brazil. Yeah. Okay. Well, so no, it's not expensive. The traditional treatment is 6 to 9 months of isoniazid, which is an antibiotic that's actually available freely. There's some stockage problems, but it's available in most countries. The main reason has been, so actually what I looked at, I did a systematic review and meta-analysis looking at sort of the reasons that people aren't getting on treatment, and a lot of it has to do with there's a big loss of people because we don't actually identify them. So I kind of tried to make it succinct in my presentation, but basically part of the reason nobody gets treatment is that nobody gets identified. So people who have active disease come in to get treated, but there's stigma around telling their family members that they have TB. Furthermore, there's not necessarily a priority of getting preventive treatment, right? Like we all know, even when you're sick, taking antibiotics kind of sucks. So if you're told you have to take 9 months of preventive treatment and you don't feel sick and you're not contagious, it's hard to motivate people to do that. However, getting active disease is a motivator because it's much harder, and in many countries also, they're more likely to have multi-drug resistant TB if they get active disease. So that's even longer treatment and much harsher. So that's again the reason for prevention.
Do you have a question, Scott? Yeah.
TB used to be way more widespread, right? It used to be pretty much in every country in the world. I guess for the population maybe it is, but at a far less active prevalence in developed nations. Was that just due to people being able to identify effective drugs and like doing nationwide campaigns, or is there changes in, say, like how hygiene is regulated in like our particular societies that really led to a decrease in spread?
I mean, the major reason that's changed, particularly in the West, is that you had the advent of antibiotics, and for a long time antibiotics were sufficient. There's also more antibiotic options in developed countries like Canada and the US, and so getting access to treatment for active disease is harder in other countries, particularly shorter treatment regimens. But yes, it's also linked to a lot of socioeconomic factors, so hygiene. But it's not necessarily so much the hygiene, but it's really the living conditions. We're also finding out there's quite an interesting link now between things like nutrition. I mean, this was probably already obviously a problem, but really nutrition, smoking, in fact, and diabetes is also linked to increased activation from latent TB to active disease. So there's just a whole host of factors, and the reality is in most of these countries with a burden of active TB, a high burden of TB, they have problems getting resources for everything, so it kind of all plays together. It's sort of the unfortunate scenario.
Thank you. So I had a question for Surashri. So I love the Spider-Man and the web, but I couldn't quite understand what is the web that's made for trapping the cancer cells and the interplay in there.
So basically the neutrophils release their DNA, and these webs of DNA are actually really sticky, and when you look at them under a microscope, they look like a spider's web. So that's how they're functioning. The main thing was they were made to trap bacteria and pathogens, but now research is sort of focusing to see what's the role with cancer cells, and do they trap cancer cells, or are cancer cells escaping?
Okay, so it could be either way. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, there's a question up there. Yeah.
I'd like to ask Rami a question. So I'm not going to talk about potholes. But do you see a day when we won't need to use concrete for bridges?
we won't need to use it as any want a replacement material?
Yep.
Well, the first thing you have to understand for concrete is that we need a lot. Like every country uses concrete, and it's the most used construction material by like 10 times. So steel is like 10%, and that's widely used, right? So the main issue is, it emits carbon dioxide, and it eventually recaptures that while just standing and existing. But we don't have as much everything else as we do concrete. Because concrete is just made of rocks, pretty much. And it's rocks and cement, which comes from Earth. So there's a lot of rocks. And
In Quebec.
in Quebec as well, yeah. So it's really easy to make, and that's it's so prominent that we use it for everything. So if we do use another material, we either will use it like as a fancy thing or like in a specific location, but not everywhere else. And the cost will be probably a lot higher. Next.
Okay, one last question, because the judges are back. Can you imagine?
I'm just trying to get everyone in to get a chance to answer. Who's left? Matthew. Go this way, guys. Yeah. So you're looking at metabolism in the context of GBM. Are you interested in the contrast between IDH1 mutant and wild-type GBMs? Because one is driven by an optimal metabolite, and the other one isn't.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a very significant, one of the many mutations in glioblastoma that can kind of result in how the tumor plays out. And it's not one that we really look at so much in our lab. Glioblastoma itself is very, very heterogeneous. There's all kinds of different mutations that can result in glioblastoma tumor formation. The one that we kind of look at the most in our lab is the EGFR V3 mutation. It's a growth factor mutation that is always active. And the reason we look at this is because we find that the oncostatin M receptor binds with this complex, and then you get this signaling complex that is just continually shouting, all right, let's go, let's go, let's grow, let's grow, right? And that mutation happens in about 50% of glioblastoma. So that's the one that we really focus on the most. I've done a little bit of looking at IDH1, IDH2 mutations, but it's not really the core focus of our lab.
Thank you. So, we're going on with our session. Avant d'annoncer les lauréats, il faut absolument que je remercie beaucoup de gens. Et je vais commencer avec les membres du jury. Merci beaucoup. Un très gros merci pour avoir fait ce travail acharné, difficile. Merci beaucoup. Is that me? No. Okay.
A little too excited.
Yes. Is it because of this? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Fine.
It's pretty good acoustics in here, so it's okay.
Yeah. I'm going to have a whole list of people, so we'll applaud at the very end. Otherwise, so many people have made this such a great occasion. So I'd like to really thank the event planning team at SkillSets and GPS, especially those in front of you. Sophie Marie, Alistair, and Olivier. We don't recognize them because they look so specific, especially the men. I mean, Sophie Marie always does. They've done an amazing job. They've been at this for months and months and months, and I think it showed how it was a well-oiled machine. Terrific. Thank you very much. Kashif Khan, who was one of our, was last year's winner in the 3MT, and he was also the Eastern. Oh, there he is. I didn't recognize, with the suit and everything, right? He was also the Eastern CAGS winner last year, and he's done so many events for us, orientation, everything else, and he was involved in the training of the students. All of the other McGill staff and students who gave feedback, because for all the sessions, when I said group feedback, people were involved in giving group feedback, then the one-on-one feedback. I hope you agree that it's worth the work that people have done. I guess you guys think you've improved, have you? You were superb. I don't know at what level you started, but you were superb. The support from alumni relations and the communications and external relations, and all of you for coming out. I mean, you know, I think it takes courage to put yourself out there, and you did an incredible job. So big round of applause. We have the decisions? We do, okay. Okay. So the 3MT are representative to the CAGS, Eastern Regional Competition, is Jay Olson and his placebo machine. Congratulations. Thank you. We got the big thumbs up. Congratulations. Yeah, you can stay up here because we'll take pictures afterwards. Ma thèse en 180 secondes, Gabriel Hull. Alors, il y a un voyage à Chicoutimi au mois de mai. And we have the people's choice. I guess many votes, right?
Many.
Online and in here.
Close to 300.
Close to 300 votes for the People's Choice Award. It's Surashli Shinde and her Spider-Man web. Congratulations. So do we need a picture just with the 3 winners?
Yeah, if you'd like to come stand out in front of the podium.
Yeah.
Should be a quick one for you. And then we'll turn it over.
Turn it over.
Yeah, and then just walk over right to the side.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So we're all ready for our big celebration, the reception. I'd like you all to join us. You can follow Alistair into the museum for this for the reception. I want to say thank you to all of you for coming out. Every year I say it's the best. I don't know, it is the best that we've had. It's been incredible. Thank you for participating. Without you, we wouldn't have had the competition. Thank you to the judges and thank you to the audience for coming and supporting everybody. So we really hope that you will stay for the reception. We're looking forward to talking to you, and you can talk to all the presenters at the same time. Thank you very much.
I can take all of those. I'm going to ask the judges to follow Olivier